Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. We have a live coaching session today. It is the third one. We are tackling emotional eating, and it's a pretty thorough session. We cover a lot of ground. So the only announcement I'll make is that I'm doing a free online webinar September 5th. And you can learn more about that at jjflazanes.com. Just click on the events page and you'll see all the things that are going on. It is free and you will get a bonus or four if you actually come to it live. So it'll be Thursday, September 5th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. And we will deal with some of the things that we're talking about in today's session, but more in the way of manifestation in all areas of life, not just about emotional eating or weight loss. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Well, thank you very much. I'm actually really excited about this.
I'm excited as well. This is going to be a fun coaching session on air. I have your goals in front of me, and I didn't know if there was a specific place that you wanted to start with. I've got that you have three top goals. One was to lose weight, one was to lose fat, like the percentage, and to stop emotional eating, learning to live a healthy lifestyle, gaining self-confidence. And so where do you want to start?
I think let's start with basically losing weight and the stop emotional eating. I think that a lot of it, kind of circles around, all my goals kind of circle around that, as well as, gaining that self-confidence and motivation. So I know that's a lot, but I think that all of those kind of circle each other. So I think that, we'll get started with maybe losing weight.
Well, why don't you tell me a little bit more about your journey of losing weight? Because I'm sure that this isn't just like one attempt, right? I mean, most of us don't just like try it one time and say, well, can't figure that out. So, I mean,
No.
obviously there's a pattern for you to deem yourself an emotional eater. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story?
Okay. Well, growing up actually was quite thin. I would say that I probably was a little underweight. And so into college, I did the 10 in freshman year, as most people do. And then afterwards, I stayed about there and stayed until I was probably in my 30s. I had children. My first child, I lost all the weight, and then I had twins, and I lost all the weight, but I was still kind of doing the a little bit at that point. I was doing some emotional eating as well as just eating poorly. I was just eating when I could. It was very difficult. I raised, three children at that time. I was raising them pretty much by myself. And so it caused me to get really poor eating habits. And then, like I said, also emotional eating. So that continued. And so I've gained, at that point, probably within about 5 years, I gained probably another 10 pounds. I started my journey of working out, which I've never did before, but it was also a way for me to get out and, join other mothers. And so I joined what was called Stoller Strides. And it's where you take your kids and, you run the streets with your kids in the stroller. And so you get some interaction with people as well as getting some physical exercise. And I did that for a while, and then I got back into work, and that just didn't happen. I couldn't do it anymore. So I lost the whole habit of exercising. And then started working and started gaining a little bit of weight. Never really dieted. All up to this point, I've never really dieted. And then was having issues with my husband at the time, and just for a little over a year, that's when I really started gaining the weight. I gained, I think in a year's time frame, I probably gained 15 to 20 pounds, which is quite a bit for me. Um, and so at that point is when we got a divorce. And then afterwards, I started losing the weight. I started dieting, I started exercising, I started just eating healthy and trying to feel good about myself again. So with that, I lost 40 pounds. So I was back down to where I almost was in college. I was at a good weight. I felt good about myself. And this was 5 years ago, or I'm sorry, it was actually 8 years ago. I kept that weight off. And, through my journey, off and on, I'd go up and down maybe 8 pounds, nothing too drastic, and kind of up and down, and trying to keep myself eating better, going through spurts. When I go up, it's when I lose track of what I'm eating and I start eating poorly. And then about 6 months ago, I actually, in that time frame, I got remarried. And 2 years ago, I remarried. And so 6 months ago, my husband and I were having some issues, and I started emotional eating. I started eating sugar, and I couldn't stop. And so I've gained 32 pounds, and I know what to do. It's like I've read a lot of materials, and it's so weird. I just started recognizing that I was emotional eating about a month ago. And at first, I just thought, oh, I was just gaining weight. And, I knew it was stress, but I never really recognized that I was eating because I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't feeling good about myself. I wasn't feeling good about my relationship. I was feeling like a failure, and I didn't want to go through that again. And so, here I am, and I still haven't taken that step to get that motivation to start losing that weight, even though in my mind I want to. I don't like the way I look, but it's just something. I feel stuck. I just feel stuck that I can't get over. um, so that's my kind of my whole background of eating and dieting and exercise.
Okay. Well, first, I have to say that I'm sitting here grinning because you just sort of brought a past life of mine back to the forefront. I used to own. I was one of the first 5 franchises of Stroller Strides.
Mm.
So the
Oh,
fact that you
great.
said Stroller Strides, because it's not Stroller Strides anymore. It's for
Yes.
mom. And so when you said Stroller Strides, I had all these great positive feelings about my moms that I had at the time, and knowing how, and of course it was based on who was running the class, really the
Uh-huh.
workout. There wasn't any specific kind of workout that we had to give people. So I totally understand. And I would have people who would come to do it just during maternity leave and then go back to work. And of course, lose that momentum of exercise. So we have the physical side. The physical side is as we age, we lose hormones and therefore muscle mass if we're not putting it on, and therefore our metabolism slows down.
Yes.
That's just a fact of aging. And even if you're doing bioidentical hormone replacement, which I recommend, most people aren't doing resistance training properly. Women are afraid of building muscle. They don't know how to do it. Even men don't know how to do it. They just think it means lift heavy weights. And then they get injured and their joints feel crappy. And so there's this whole science that's really missing from most exercise programs, because everyone thinks it has to be CrossFit and something super hard and crazy where you could possibly get injured, which is not
Yes,
like
actually.
that at all. That's like the extreme. And then there's everything prior to that. There's sort of like physical therapy, and then moving off of physical therapy, there are the exercises that I teach people to do, and then you can move in intensity as you start to build a foundation. So just off the bat, if you're not doing any kind of exercise, you aren't helping yourself in your metabolism. But we
Right.
know based on your story that this is not about you not exercising. I'm just planting the seed that the rest of your future does depend on. Your metabolism is influenced by and is created by the amount of muscle you have in your body. So figuring out an exercise routine to keep your bones strong, to keep your joints, it's funny because on one end, I would never recommend most people work with a trainer, quite honestly, because I'm a trainer, because I see what they do and I know what trainers know and don't know. I used to teach trainers. So I don't want you to work with a trainer because the likelihood is that they don't know what they're doing when it comes to biomechanics and you're going to hurt yourself. But this,
Actually,
yeah.
on that aspect, I'm sorry to interrupt, but on that aspect, I've actually been injured twice from a trainer. So it is very difficult. One time I actually removed my muscle from my calf. So, it's completely separated from the bones.
I'm
So
so
yes,
sorry.
I've been very injured from having trainers. So it has been difficult, to step back into that.
I'm so sorry. It's what I fight against. It makes me sound like a nasty person when I basically put down trainers. I'm a snob. I'll be quite honest when it comes to the science, because I, again, was teaching trainers 20 years ago. I knew what they didn't know, and I've learned so much since then as well. And unless someone is self-motivated to learn biomechanics, and when it comes to exercise, that is not where people want to learn. They want to learn the food stuff. They don't want to learn the actual science of exercise. So I'm so sorry about that. And if you ever want to consider doing it again, I'd be happy to help you put a program together that I promise would be safe and even restorative for you, and build muscle and increase your metabolism. And it can all be done remotely. And that's, again, something that I stress, and why I've moved into the kind of work that I'm doing, because I couldn't just work with everybody that was close by. And now I can actually help people everywhere. So just in exercise, figuring out in your lifestyle, figuring out a time frame, figuring out if it's 15 minutes, if it's once a week, if it's twice a week. I have a client who's lost she's lost 100 pounds in the course of 3 to 4 years, working out twice a week. And that person, has since fluctuated up and down based on stress, but for the most part has maintained a pretty large, considerable weight loss, over 70 pounds. She had one parent die and the other parent go into a home. And so anyway, there's been that life stress, and there's still a little bit of that emotional eating that's going on. But in terms of exercise, we accomplished a lot twice a week over the course of a couple of years. So I'm saying that to you so that I want you to understand that it doesn't mean you have to be doing something 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, 1 hour a day. Too many times people think that exercise has to be all or nothing, and that's what they tell themselves, which makes them not do it. It's the excuse to get out of it. But that is not your problem, but in the future, because sometimes what happens when people do commit to exercise, it does help you refocus. The endorphins of exercising, the momentum that's created will help in sometimes making a better choice. All right. So if you're in a stressful place right now where you're reaching for food, if you were to go exercise and then deal with your stress, the likelihood is you'd probably choose a little bit better or a little bit less. You do it less if you were incorporating something positive, because intuitively you wouldn't want to wreck that. Like if you were making the commitment to exercise and you felt really good, the endorphins from the exercise would really satisfy, sort of making you feel better. And so you wouldn't feel as stressed. You wouldn't have it. It's a great outlet a lot of times for people to deal with stress. Now, I'm going to put exercise aside because, like I said, that is really not your issue right now. But I needed to address that on a physical side, as time goes on, it becomes more important to build muscle and to find some kind of regular routine. Regular meaning commitment of time. What you do in that time will need to change as your body adapts. So it's not like going to the same class over and over again for 5 years. You will plateau and you will reverse because you will be strong enough to handle it and it won't work anymore. So I'm talking about the commitment of time. Let's say it's twice a week for 30 or 45 minutes. If you could commit to a time frame, what you choose to do in that time frame would be structured in a way to get you the biggest bang for your buck. So whether it be resistance training to build muscle and increase your metabolism, or cardio, or a combination of the two, or a circuit program, it definitely wouldn't be hatha yoga because if you're only doing twice a week, that is not going to burn calories and build muscle. So exercise just has to be the piece. And then we haven't talked about what you're eating, and I don't want to talk about that yet. Okay. I want to talk about why you're eating. So I see that, in these sessions, this is not the appropriate time for me to do a chart reading, but you did give me that you're a Sag with a Gemini moon. So you're Sagittarius, you're a fire sign, and Sages are about action and about truth seeking. And it's in your sun. So you sometimes can be probably blunt. You can be direct. You like a straight line. You just want to get it done. You are probably proactive in other ways. You're a straight shooter most of the time. And you like to travel and you love different cultures and you're open to that kind of thing. And you're definitely interested in ethereal things. And that's just how you deal with life in general. But your moon is in Gemini, and your moon is how you deal with emotion. And you're Gemini. Gemini is the third sign. Sorry, it's the third sign in the astrological line. I don't refer to it as a wheel because if we think of a snowball going down the hill and getting bigger and bigger as it goes and collects more snow, astrology, when you start in a line, there is a beginning and there is an end. And at the beginning, which is Aries, we have that Aries is the infant of the signs. Aries are often considered pioneers, leaders, can also be considered arrogant. When it comes to emotional processing, Aries are normally a black and white, yes, no, right, wrong, left, right, very like duality, and there's no third choice. And if you give them a third choice, they don't understand. I don't compute. It doesn't make sense. It's either this or it's that. And so that's where we start. And then Aries evolves into Taurus, and then Taurus evolves into Gemini. So Gemini is number 3, and Gemini literally is the twins because it doesn't know if it should be Aries or Taurus. So now this placement, and it's an air sign, and air is about thoughts and thinking. So in your moon, which is how you deal with emotion, your air is Gemini. You are the least developed air sign, and you have a lot of mental energy, which means if you're dealing with emotion with mental energy, you're disconnected. And most likely, you're telling yourself a lot of stories and you have this chatter going on in your head all the time that you're trying to silence by eating. Would that be accurate?
Oh, yes. I've got a lot of chatter going on. And yes, I have been silencing it with eating.
So the thing about emotional eating that people don't understand, we all numb. I don't know how long which show, by the way, do you listen to?
I listen to them all, actually. I started listening to the Fit to Love, but I've listened to them all.
Okay, cool. So back when there was only Fit to Love, I believe somewhere in the first season, I did a show about understanding and healing addiction. I repurposed that show on spirit, purpose, and energy. And I've referred to it a lot of time, like many times. And I usually tell most people to re-listen to that. It's called Understanding and Healing Addiction. Most people don't realize they have addictions. We all have addictions because we all, doesn't matter what your sign is, at times get overwhelmed with our feelings and don't know what to do with them or aren't ready to process them or aren't ready to sit in them. So whether it be on a heart addiction would be drugs and alcohol, some kind of substance that your body becomes dependent on. And by the way, anyone who's out there smoking and nicotine, the fallacy is that it's a chemical addiction. It is a chemical addiction, but I believe it's after 48 or 72 hours, it is completely out of your body. So past that, when you're telling yourself that it's because my body needs it, it's not at all. It's actually psychological. There's a great book by Alan Carr called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking. So anyway, so those would be some of the hard addictions: tobacco, alcohol, and any other drugs. Then we move to the soft addictions, which are eating, right? Although eating really should be a hard addiction. Eating, shopping, control, like needing to have control all the time. For some people, it's how they look. They're addicted to how they look. People that are OCD are addicted to control. And so we all choose ways to numb ourselves. And the most common way people numb themselves is food, because we don't think there's anything wrong with it. We need to eat to live. People eat together in community. It's celebratory. It's nutritious, hopefully, and we need it. So we tend to ignore that it's an addiction and that it's us really trying to not be present with our pain or with our emotion. Now, there are times where you're in pain, like I've been going through it right now, and you're sitting in your pain because there's no way to problem solve it. There's nothing you can do about it because you know what it is, and it's literally just an allowing of it to surface and then release in the time frame that you need. But that's not most people. Most people have a thought or feeling and have a lot of stories and going on in their mind and don't know how to make it go away, don't communicate it or problem solve it. So a lot of people out there talk about emotional eating and how to sort of control it, which I think is hilarious because, again, we're looking at an addiction for another addiction. Yeah. How do I control or manage emotional eating. Well, how about we just get rid of it? If you're emotionally eating, the question I have for you is, what are you not saying? What are you not doing? Or what are you ignoring that's coming up in you? Now, before you answer that, if you just choose to answer that, you may not know the answer. It's not as simple as I'm having this feeling, because most people, again, are reacting to what's going on in your head, what's going on in your mind. You've made up a story about your situation, about your partner, about your family. Something happened and you've gotten your feelings hurt, and now you're playing all the parts in your head of the conversation, and you're being you and you're being them, and you're taking it through, and you're getting more and more upset. Yet notice, this hasn't really happened for real. So now there's been all this deciding and interpretation had about the situation that causes all these feelings that you don't know what to do with, because first of all, they're not real. And we haven't uncovered what your true need is and how can we get that need met. I've talked about it on the show a lot, and one day, or maybe I won't do it. I don't know. Maybe I'll just continue talking about it, because I'd rather everybody come to a live event, because I can tell you about this. You can listen to the episode, but until you work the process and keep working the process until you have that like come to Jesus aha moment where you're like, oh my God, I get it. When that happens, life changes completely. It's episode 118 on the Fit to Love podcast show, called Three Steps to Effective Communication. It includes, when you go to fittolove.tv and you can find the episode there, there's a link that you can download a list of your feelings and your needs. My assessment, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just giving you the overview for everyone else who's listening, what normally happens. I deal with this all the time. In fact, I was telling a story to a client today about another client who was a binge eater, and she had been an emotional eater her whole life. And we had one session, and it was around Thanksgiving, and I'll give you the brief story so that you can see if this fits for you. She still hasn't necessarily worked out all the stuff, because there's abuse, there's lots of things, and that needs to be unlearned. In this specific situation, it was Thanksgiving, and I think somebody had died, her boyfriend's father or grandfather or something, and all of a sudden everyone said to her, you have to take care of Thanksgiving. Well, she freaked out. She was like, I don't do that. And I have 2 young kids, and I can't do this. So she all of a sudden felt this immense amount of pressure, which under normal circumstances would make her eat constantly, because of the pressure she felt. So we went through and problem solved it. So the 3 steps to effective communication boil down to these very simple steps. Number 1, what am I feeling? So I have a sheet. It's a list. It's very useful. Even today, I told a client to print out one for every day and do this every single day. Check in with what you're really feeling. Because again, especially for you, you have like the Sag part of you just wants to take action. And the Gemini part of you is thinking and thinking and thinking and creating this tornado of emotion and energy that isn't being expressed and isn't being solved. So we don't necessarily know what's really going on. I mean, you might. I don't know yet, because you haven't told me and I haven't let you tell me, but I wanted to quickly go through the 3-step process for you and everybody else. So it's, what am I feeling? And even that act for some people alone can help them feel validated, like, oh my God, I had no idea I was feeling that. Step 2, anytime you have a negative emotion, it's because you perceive that a need you have is not being met. That's it. We don't do this process when you feel good, because everything is well in the world. But when you have a negative feeling, it's because a need is not being met. And most of us don't have a vocabulary of needs, because need for a lot of people equals neediness. And that's not what it is. So this list has 86 basic human needs on the list. Every single one of them, all of us need. So identifying your need is the next step. And the third step is to create strategies, more than one, to get your need met. But the kicker here is that they're only true and you've only hit it if you don't require anyone else to be different. The minute we say, I need you to do this so I feel better, we have not hit the real need. And that's where people get stuck. They think but I'm in this situation and I'm a victim to the circumstance. And if they don't do this, then I don't do that. And in that case, we haven't gotten to the real need. So working this process is really important. But what had happened, so with the client during Thanksgiving, I gave her three choices. So her three choices were to, or we talked about what the strategies could be. And the strategy was for her to communicate to people that she needed help, and that if she didn't get help, here's all she could provide. So that was one choice. If she got help, here's what she'd prefer. And then I forget what the third choice was. But there were three choices. And all of a sudden there was this like relaxed vibration that like she felt like, oh my God, okay, I can do this. And then she reported back that not only did she stop binge eating and emotional eating, she barely ate at Thanksgiving. I mean, because she was portion controlled and she felt confident and she didn't need to eat to suppress her emotion because she had a solution to the problem. So I'm going to kick it back to you.
Okay.
Do you know what you're repressing?
Oh gosh, I've been really working on this actually. I started working with a Coda group, and so I've been working on not only just just today, what am I dealing with today, but I'm also working on past, childhood, so forth. So one of the things that I do have to say is that I do feel that my biggest need is to be loved unconditionally. I feel like, most of my life that I've pretty much had conditions. I've in order for me to do things, I had to have conditions. People gave those conditions to me. They told me what I needed to do. And so I'm working through that myself and working through to try to figure out not only, oh, sorry, it hit something. Not only how am I feeling, that's something that I've never done before. I mean, I used mentioned this number one thing, and it's like, what am I feeling? Oh my gosh, that's a big concept that I've been digging, deep down. I keep pushing it down, keep pushing it down. I don't want to feel. And so what is it that I'm feeling? It is basically just that. I want to feel like people don't give me conditions. And I want to feel like I can, um, that I can make my own decisions, and and I know I can, but it's just something that I have to work through and have to, to start delivering that, to start delivering those boundaries and start delivering everything that I've been, learning, but haven't actually done. So this past, 6 months, it's been a feeling of, like I said, failure. Um, I didn't, I failed in my first marriage, and all of that is what my mind is telling me. But now I'm trying to tell myself something different. It wasn't a failure, it was a process. It was something that I had to go through on my own to learn. And I'm finding that in this past month that I've really been growing, and I've really been learning what is it that I needed to learn. And the biggest thing is that, I needed to learn how to deal with my codependency. I needed to learn how to not people please. I needed to learn that it was okay if people are upset with me. I needed to learn how to set those boundaries. So I am learning now, how to do that. I'm learning now, what it is that I did. So in the past, this past 6 months, it was just that. I didn't, I felt like things were going bad, and I felt like a failure, and I felt like all of this stuff, and it was just repeating itself and repeating itself. And so I was going into somewhat of a depression. Um, and I think that's part of the feeling. Now the need, I think that's kind of the same type of thing for me, of feeling in a need. I'm still trying to learn what an actual feeling is, but I guess the need is that I need somebody to love me for who I am. And some of that, I think, is, the way I'm perceiving things. And so I'm working on trying to perceive things differently. And that's what goes back to the self-confidence, trying to gain that self-confidence to think back. So I guess that's it.
Okay, let's address a couple things.
Okay.
So First, you mentioned you've been feeling like a failure, and boy, am I right there with you, sister. I have, since moving, have recognized that every little thing is really that for me. And it took probably 45 minutes after a fight in the morning, and then we sort of ignored it for the rest of the day. Doug and I sat down and because he got triggered and he thought I got triggered, and I wouldn't call it a trigger. I'd call it I got agitated. But what was underneath it, what the emotion that was bubbling up was that everything that I was perceiving was a reflection of my failure.
Mm-hmm.
But when I acknowledged that, and it even happened today again, when I was with one of my clients I've been with for 10 years, I cry. And so my question to you is, like, I'm actually mourning my relationship now. I being out of the house in a new space is the reality check of life is different now. This somehow that house protected me from having to mourn my relationship, even though I was processing the entire time during the marriage, after the marriage, the whole way around. I was constantly processing. I would be in tears. I was in therapy. I was doing clearings, and I felt good. And the shock, the PTSD of being told I had to move and then leaving triggered this avalanche of unreally expressed mourning. So my question to you is, have you mourned?
I would say no. I haven't mourned my divorce, and I haven't mourned my father passing right at the same time. I shoved those feelings down. I didn't want to feel those feelings. And so, no, I haven't. After the divorce, I felt free, and, because it was a bad relationship, but I felt like I didn't need to mourn because I felt good, and I felt, but I still think that, yes, you're right, that I think that is something that I needed to go back to, and I do need to, like I said, mourn that and my father passing. Um, that's something that as well I kind of just escaped from. I got into work and, dove into raising kids alone because it all happened at the same time. So no, I have not mourned.
So the Sag part of you is the get it done. So you're raising kids by yourself. There's no time to break down. Okay. That is what a logical type A personality, full of fire, anyone's going to say to themselves. I don't have time. I need to survive. You're in survival mode. You're in fight or flight. So that makes sense that you didn't do that. Now, again, I don't know the rest of your chart, but being Sag sun and a Gemini moon, I don't know if you have any water in you. And it's really easy with that combination of Sag and Gemini to not actually be connected to your feelings. And so you have all these feelings rolling around in your body, which is why you feel uncomfortable. And then we try to eat to suppress it. And if, energy and emotion, or emotion is like energy, it is energy, and it's like a calorie, right? If it's not expressed, it gets held, it gets stored, just like
Yeah.
food. If I'm eating 4,000 calories a day and I'm burning, and it's not about calories, people. So please don't get crazy about this analogy I'm about to give. Okay. Counting calories is way long gone. We don't count calories. I mean, we may look at a roundabout, but quality of calories, that conversation is just changed. But let's just say for math's sake that, you eat 4,000 calories a day, you only burn 1,000, and you only exercise or move around for 500. And now we're at a surplus. If you continue that process over time, we have an excess of calories that create body fat, that because you haven't used that energy. When we have emotions that we're not expressing, like literally expressing, if you're not screaming or crying, if it's not coming out of you, it's in you. And the more of that emotion that's in you, that's not being let out, you have to contain it. And that's what the food does. It like puts a lid on it. Like you're trying to like push it down. So, I thought I mourned. I mean, I knew I didn't mourn completely because I didn't, it was it was a 2-hour process. We're separated, and then boom, here's Doug. So there was no like space to even be single or date or like process or even be alone. I was never alone. So I had recognized that early on. And I'm not alone now, but the move triggered this alone feeling of failure and of real ending. It's a real ending. An era has ended. And so I've been mourning literally for over a week. I mean, I broke open last Monday when we had to leave the house, hysterical the whole time. I mean, the whole time. Thank God for my mother and Doug to pick up the pieces. I mean, I continued to move, but I literally was sobbing the whole time. Like, it wasn't like I held it together and then went in the bathroom. No, I was sobbing incessantly. My neighbors, I went over there. I couldn't even deal with the realtor. Okay. Because it was just bubbling up. Like and I shared that on social media because because the one thing I'm proud about is I'm not blocked. Like, I wasn't reaching for, alcohol or food, or I wasn't trying to numb it. I was in it. It was coming out. There was no holding it, but I'm a Pisces and I have water in me and I'm very in touch with my feelings. When you have planets that aren't water, most of the time, the feeling part for a lot of people, because again, most of us have multiple addictions. Yours might be food and control and trying to control. And so if you're trying to control, emotions feel unsafe. And most people think it feels so bad, I don't want to feel that. But what happens is we just keep repressing that feeling. You mentioned depression. I did a show also on overcoming depression. And there's kind of 3 types of depression. Most people think that there's a chemical depression, and there is a chemical depression, but most of it's some of your food. Most of it's not because you are off. It has to do with what you eat. But let's take the chemical side. Most depression is repression. It's you not expressing what's real for you. It's you not being honest. It's you not allowing things to come out. So if you were depressed, it's because you weren't, and I can say I've been depressed because I had to pick myself back up and work and try to unpack boxes. I haven't been a mess. Today is the first day after a space clearing that I actually finally feel a little bit more human, like I have some energy. And I had a session with somebody else yesterday too to help that. So, but the point is that if you haven't mourned, I mean, your father died and you had a divorce, and regardless of the initial feeling of relief that you had from the divorce, if you're now feeling like a failure, or you were a month ago or 6 months ago, the energy is trying to tell you it's still there. So processing that emotion is important for you to release what you're using food to try to manage. You're trying to like hold down a big bubble that wants to pop. And you're like, no, no, no. And so it just keeps growing, and it's like yeast. It keeps growing and growing, and you're like, no, no, no. And you keep eating. So it's not about the what you're eating. It's about the why you're eating. And I think that if you can get to the place where you can release some of that and you can work on some of that. So that's one part of this. It's for you to have a practice, figure out whether it be a meditation, or I've got a bunch of them. I don't know if you've ever done my manifestation challenge, but there are some that are on there. I've got a manifestation starter kit, which is a bunch of audios that I've created, 2 of which people use on the challenge. One is a chakra clearing, and they're designed to get you in your body. They're designed to get you out of your head and connect with your body, because your body is what lets you know what's going on with you. And building the relationship, bridging the gap between your head and being disconnected from your body, and listening to your body, listening to your intuition, listening to the aches and pains and indigestion and the things that are happening in your body to truly check in with what's going on for you is gold. That's where your intuition lies. It lies in your body, not in your brain. So we have to connect those two. So I think you need a practice to connect you to your emotions. And it could be on both levels, on a left brain side, so doing this feelings and needs process, and on a right brain side to actually feel your feelings. Where does the tension lie in your body? Where do you, you could go through the needs and feelings list in this 3-step process. And when you're on what do I feel? You could pause and do a couple meditative breaths and say, where do I feel this in my body? Do I have tension in my neck? Is my stomach twisted and turned? Are my lungs constricted? I have shortness of breath. So that would be a good way for you to introduce adding. Are you taking notes?
Yes. Sorry.
Well, that's okay, because I could hear the notes in the back. Don't worry.
I was flipping it. Sorry.
You're going to be downloading this episode, so you'll have it to review. Don't worry. Probably going to air soon. So you need to get into your body, and we have to do a balanced brain of left and right brain. I want to address something you said about the unconditional, like being loved unconditionally. So you're almost there. The feeling we have to go a little bit more deep on the feeling part, which I want you to do after this is over, after this session is over, I'll send you that list, and to really sit with a couple of the different feeling words that are on there. There's 100 different feeling words on there. So I want you to get really specific about what you're truly feeling. And now your need is probably, it's not on there. It's not going to be on there as love. Well, it might be under love, but loving unconditionally, because loving unconditionally is a condition, right? Like it's still a condition to call it loving unconditionally. So I want to get more specific about the need. Now, what you said was, in terms of the strategy, I need someone to love me. Now, when we give the power to someone else, we haven't found the true need. Yeah. Because no matter what you do, you can't make anyone treat you any way. The answer has to be, how do I give it to myself? So when you figure out what the need is and you go through the strategies, even if it's to love yourself unconditionally, what does that mean for you? So let me ask you, Melissa, what does you loving you unconditionally look like?
Oh, goodness. Well, it would be the self-confidence. It would be, feeling good about who I am. It would be, these are tough questions.
Okay.
Just be comfortable within myself. I mean, it's something that I struggle with so much, is just feeling good who I am. Thinking that people like me for who I am and not necessarily for what I'm doing for them. And that's something that, it's hard. It's hard for me. And I need to gain that self-confidence within myself. I kept thinking that I had it when I got a divorce, because I was, going, and I felt good, but it wasn't really, it was still the need of wanting to be loved. And so I was still out there looking for somebody else. And I do need to find that within myself. I need to address that within myself and not, need it from somebody else, need it from, my spouse, or need it from my kids, or need it from anybody else. So yeah, it's a tough question for me. I honestly, it's a really tough question.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot in terms of trying to figure out the answer. The more you sit with this, the more the answer is going to be uncovered. Yeah. And people that are listening are probably asking themselves the same thing. It is a tough question right now because of how you're used to looking at things. When, I'm glad that you said you started out with Fit to Love. The whole point of when I wrote the book, it started with the book before the podcast. The book is how to get physically, emotionally, and spiritually fit to attract the love of your life. But the love of life is you. It's not about another person. And how we treat ourselves is how we reflect out into the world as our beacon, as our signal. And so when someone's going to match that or pick up on that, it's because you created it. Yes. And too often people are looking for someone else to give them what they don't have. But the problem is it's temporary and it's fleeting. And someone may, and the wounds that you attract from somebody else also are going to, you're going to provide something for them and they're going to provide something for you. And if there's not a consciousness about it, it will then turn the opposite way after you can't provide for them what they need and they can't provide what you need, because you need to fill your own cup first. You need to patch the hole in your boat because they can't constantly fill it enough for you to stay afloat. You have to patch the hole internally so that you can be strong with your own foundation. Now, even at that stage, there's still work to be done in any relationship, because you're still attracting somebody who is going to help you uncover your greatest wounds. And that's a whole other separate conversation. We're doing a whole couples retreat on that. And that's what Imago Therapy is about. And that's what all the couples coaching is. Because, when you choose a partner, and the thing about the divorce, one of the reasons why it hit me so hard was because I understood that it didn't, like, we're going to repeat the patterns. It doesn't matter how much work I've done. It's much better, but some of the same issues are coming up. I'm handling them different. I have a different relationship with them. And now I have a partner who also handles them differently. But the good news is that we can work on it together. You can't outrun yourself, and you take yourself with you. So what happens is, if you don't clean up the relationship you have with you from that marriage to the next one, the exact same thing's going to happen, because it's really about how you're feeling about you and how you understand what the dynamic is and how much of it is on your shoulders of your own responsibility. Too often we want to blame the other person and say, well, it's their fault that this and that and whatever. And part of my whole journey in going from the book to the podcast, besides wanting to help him, like I said, one day you're going to realize that the whole podcast was for you, because I'm bringing on people who, you're not going to listen to me, but maybe you'll listen to somebody else. And in the process, I gained this immense amount of knowledge and understanding that I never would have had otherwise. And so it served not only me, but you, because we're here today because of that, and everyone else who's listening and benefits from these conversations that we're having. So just keep that plant that seed that it's the confidence. And you did say something else about other people. It's almost like I want you to stop, like, other people are a mirror for you. So like, I don't want you to be concerned with other people. I want you to be concerned about you. Like, do you like you? Are you okay in the situation? Are you making a choice that supports you? Are you, even if you're giving to someone else, is it taking away from you, or is it adding to you, or are you neutral about it? You mentioned people pleaser. People pleaser is another addiction that most people pat themselves on the back for, because boy, doesn't that sound nice. I'm a nice person. It's not an addiction. It's not a problem. I'm a people pleaser, right? Which really means you're trying to control others' opinions of you so you feel safe. But it's not real, because you don't know when they turn their back or what's going on in their head, if they don't like you, or if they may present to you what you think you want, and then the next minute they could change on a dime, and then what? You've given all your power away to somebody else to decide whether or not you're worthy or not. So that will never work out for anyone. And so people pleasing, while we all want to say, oh, but I'm a nice person. You probably are a nice person, but you're not nice to yourself, because you put other people's opinions and stories and preferences above your own. So you're the least people pleasing to yourself, most of you that want to claim that addiction. So when you learn to love you and create boundaries, then you start to attract better quality people who love you for who you are and who see you for who you are, because you accept you for who you are. I mean, this show is an example, right? You guys all hear, I get negative reviews, I get positive reviews, but I get negative ones too. It's hilarious to me, because I'm okay with it, because I recognize it isn't about me. And I'm fine with it, because I'm not for everybody. God forbid, I'm a Sag rising, which means I'm going to become more and more Sag, which means I'm going to become more and more direct and more like, I don't give a shit. So, and I know that's too much for some people. They're too confronted. They are uncomfortable. And am I supposed to say, I'm so sorry? I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're confronted, but that's your issue, not mine. I'm speaking truth. That's all I'm saying. So if you don't like me, that's okay. Change the channel. So when it comes to confidence, I just want to be careful, because a confidence isn't something that you deem that you've hit and achieved because other people have decided so. I want you in every situation to get real conscious about your choices and if they're good for you. What are your needs? How are you feeling? Forget everybody else for a little while, because it's not working for you. Okay. It's making you emotionally eat, because you're so concerned about everybody else. And the deep fear underneath all of that is that you're not worthy of love. That's all of our fears. So it's not just you, it's everybody. Okay. Everyone out there, the deepest level of all of our pain is, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of other people's attention. So we have to start there. We have to start with, why are you a good person? Why are you, and without performing, without doing, just being, just take all that Gemini Sag energy that wants to do and go, forget the doing. I'm just innately worthy because I'm human. I've incarnated. I'm here. I don't need to perform to be worthy. I just am. And so that's the journey we want to work towards.
Yes, I agree. Something that, I told you the past month I've really been working on myself. And one thing that, something you mentioned too a little bit about was control. When I used to hear the word control, I used to think of, somebody controlling you and, kind of what I've had in my past. And somebody says, you're controlling, telling me I'm controlling. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I don't care. I don't control other people. What do you mean? And it finally hit me is that, yes, I am controlling. I am doing whatever it is to make them, to make them happy. So I am trying to control their behavior and trying to control their happiness to make myself happy. So it was just like a big eye opening that it's like, yes, I am controlling. It was a, big eye opener for myself, and something that gave me a breakthrough on that aspect.
Well, pat yourself on the back. It's a journey. Sometimes it takes people a long time, even when told multiple times over multiple years. And sometimes, you're only ready to get it when you're ready to get it. And, what controlling means is that we don't trust. So the
Yeah.
flip side of control is I don't trust. And that for a lot of people, they're looking for trust and faith and security in external things that are conditional, in people. And what Abraham would say is that we're looking for love in all the wrong places, that the true trust, the true surrender, the true connection, the true alignment is with who you really are. And that is part of source energy. So if you think about it in terms of, I have to clean up my own connection, I have to clean up my own alignment, I have to get clear about what I believe, and whatever that may be for everybody who's listening. I don't, for some people, it might be God separate from you. And, if you're listening to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy, and you've listened from the beginning, my position on all that. But it's not about me to tell you whatever your belief is and whatever your faith is, whatever you in a visceral way truly understand and believe. And then you have to tap into that. And that's where you feel safe and secure and trust and understand the processes, that we're infinite beings, that we don't die, that we recycle, that we're never going to get it done, and that we're not here to take it so seriously. But at the same time, we have fun creating and getting clarity and growing and expanding. And so part of that process, we evaluate like we're doing right now. And we're looking for the freedom that comes out of understanding what's really going on for you. And I think that the freedom you're going to feel when you have clarity on some of the things you're not expressing, on some of the things you're possibly doing that sabotage yourself, on I'm going to take a big guess here and say that you probably give your power away a lot. So when you reclaim all of that, and you can hold it and have it and take care of it and nurture it, and it's yours and no one else can touch it, that's where confidence comes from. That's where trust comes from. And that's where the illusion of control can be released, because it doesn't matter what anyone else does or says. You are completely in alignment with yourself. And that's what your confidence is, that trust and belief. And possibly doing something like not affirmations. I mean, that would be fine, but maybe a journal entry every night for you about the things you appreciate about yourself, and be real about it. Like, truly, what do you appreciate? And don't give it lip service, and really dig deep and do it every day, and do it the longest list you can come up with that day. And every day it'll change. Some days you'll do something and you'll be like, hey, I did that really well. And you'll write that down. But I think that the conversation of why you are worthy, how can you love yourself unconditionally, is the start. Okay, this is not a overnight thing here, but is the start of new habits that can start to eliminate and have you be more conscious when you go to emotionally eat, to understand. And you'll catch yourself, why am I eating right now? What is it that I need to express? And getting comfortable expressing emotion. I've said expression, and I realized over the years, I have to stop being general. It's literally people cry or scream. Those are your choices. You're going to cry or you're going to scream. But somehow, some way, and it's probably a combination of both, energy has to come out of your body. That is how we release. Okay, so tears, do not be afraid of them. They will not break you. They will free you, actually. Free you of all the anxiety, of all the stress, of all the feeling, the heavy feelings you have. Trust me, get comfortable with it, because if you don't, then we don't have success on the other end. because there's no, again, you cannot run your pain.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That honestly, it's so weird. It's like stuff that I already know, but just to hear it from somebody else telling me is just eye-opening and just really, comforting.
Well, good. Well, I just wanted to also pull in that Sag and Gemini piece, because what it means is I don't want you to beat yourself up for not being connected. And I want you to
Hmm.
know that your tendency is to not be connected to your body, because the Gemini air sign in your head, thoughts and thinking, wants to live there. And the Sag part of you just wants to get stuff done and move and move and move and run,
Hmm.
basically. Okay. So what I'm asking you to do is to connect yourself on a different level. And it's something that is necessary for you to make this transition. But I just want you to give yourself, like, let yourself off the hook, because it isn't in your nature. Does that make sense? There
Yeah.
are some people on the flip side who are emotional eaters, who sit in their pain, who mourn all the time, and they can't pull themselves out. So you have at least, your Sag and Gemini can be a mechanism to actually help you balance some of that. So we want to be able to really utilize those energetic aspects of what we already have going for us. We want to understand them in a way to utilize them for our benefit, but also to recognize where we have to have help. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we did a little bit of that astrology. Again, there's more to it than just that. So there's your
Yeah.
Venus, which is how you deal with love, your Mars, which is another energy planet, your Mercury, how you communicate, your soul sign, which is your true node. So there's a lot more that can be worked out to show you your habits and patterns and where you might get stuck. And again, as an overview, again, we could keep going, but as an overview, there's the exercise piece, which can help emotions. It can help be an outlet for stress and could help you make better choices when it comes to food and stuff. I mean, it's not going to help you express your emotions or become conscious of them, but at least it's utilizing some of that energy and moving the energy around. And then we didn't talk about what you're eating. We just focus on the why, which
Hmm.
is the real question underneath it. I'm not a fan of dieting. I know you mentioned, like, I've never dieted, and I don't really want you to diet. I want you to choose
Hmm.
a food plan and a lifestyle that works for you, and be done with it, right? And figure it out and figure out how you feel on it. And then that's it. And there's no doing it to lose weight necessarily. There's doing it. And then once we remove the need to repress your feelings, there shouldn't be a problem,
Okay.
right?
Yep. I have actually tried quite a few, and you're right. I don't like to use the word diet, but it is a diet. A diet to me is just a way of a lifestyle of eating. But I've tried a couple of different ones and never really found one that I feel that works. And a lot of it is because it involves other people that don't want to necessarily eat what I'm eating. So I haven't quite found that, but I do eat healthy, or on the most part, other than the whole emotional eating of the sweets. So I do have to say that I eat healthy, and I think I know what I should be eating, is what I should say.
Well, there's a whole other conversation about food. There's looking at digestion. Do you have proper digestion? Are you assimilating your food properly? Do you have any sensitivities? So, and then there's the, what there are certain foods that create cravings. There are certain foods that create depression. So there are ways to clean up the diet to help this whole process of you emotionally eating less, just because biochemically we're going to change your chemistry. But we don't have time for that right now. But what I'm
Yeah.
going to do, like I do on every coaching session, and I'll follow up. I'll send you the needs and feelings list, like we talked about. I'll also send you a couple different packages if you would like to work further. I'm happy to help you further. There's lots to do, but this was
Yes.
a great start, and hopefully you found some value.
Yes, I did. Like I said, it really just hearing somebody tell me, things that, like I said, things that I already knew, but to hear somebody tell me this is what you need to do again, it helps reaffirm that, and it really is, it's comforting. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Before we close out today's show, just to keep you accountable in case we do work together, what is it you're going to take from this and actually implement right now?
Well, right now I'm going to implement, I mean, I heard you say quite a few times that I need to get, a program within myself of not just working out, exercising, I should say, not just a necessarily workout, but I do need to get a program within myself of, when to go exercise and make that, if I put it down on my calendar, then it's, the Sagittarius, I guess, is probably the aspect. I will do it. If it's on my calendar, I'm going to do it. So I need to get that on my calendar again. And secondly is to start feeling those feelings that I've been pushing down for so long. I don't even think it's just the mourning of my divorce and mourning of my dad. I think it's, there's quite a few other things as well. So those are two really big ones for me.
Excellent. Good job. So just remember, you have to feel it to heal it, in terms of, we got to go through it. It's not, we can't avoid it. We can't go around it or above it or underneath it. We got to go through it. And that's sort of the way to transformation. It's part of the journey. So I appreciate that you were vulnerable enough to share all this with everyone today. I know there are a lot of people listening who appreciate, because they can relate to exactly a lot of the things that you shared. I'm probably going to get emails saying, oh my God, I thought you were talking to me. Her story is my story, because it's very common. And hopefully everybody got a little bit of benefit. And again, I really appreciate your ability to come on and to share this with everybody.
Well, thank you. Honestly, the reason why I did this too is to try to break through that barrier that I had for myself. And so I felt like in order to do it, I had to be vulnerable. I had to do something that I was uncomfortable and something, that was completely out of my norm. And this was, but I feel that I got so much more than that.
Well, congratulations. You
Thank
succeeded
you.
with flying colors, and you will have, I know Johanna said she listened to her episode a couple times. So you at least have this recorded. I don't record all of my coaching sessions. So at least you have this recorded to go back and listen to it over and over and over and over and over and over again, anytime you need a reminder. And I would recommend that if I don't work with you past this, that you do listen to it maybe every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because you're going to hear new things. When you get, I downloaded a lot of stuff to you, and you're only going to be able to take in parts of it. And when you deal with those parts and then you evolve and expand to the next level, you'll be ready for the next piece. And so there's going to be a lot more to unpack as time goes on. So definitely listen to it again.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Melissa.
All right. Bye.